Lesson 4, theme matters. So you all are very close to finishing Maniac Magee. And when we finish a book, it's very tempting to be like, yay, I finished a book, and put it to the side and not think about it. But that's not what strong readers do. When strong readers finish books, they consider the theme. So let's talk about what is theme. Realistic fiction novels usually have an author's message about a topic, and that message is called a theme. So when we're considering theme, we might ask ourselves, what does the author want me to learn after I finish reading this book? And even, how does the author want me to change as a person? So there's actually three steps to finding theme. Step 1. First, you have to identify one topic in the story. Step 2. Revisit parts of the book that demonstrate that topic. These are the reoccurring events, or events that occur over and over again. Step 3. Think about the recurring events and specific details and determine the author's message or theme. So now I want you to watch as I determine the theme, one of the themes of Maniac Magee. So the first thing I did was I thought of a topic in our book. And one of the topics that occurs over and over again is of death and dying. So the second thing I did was I thought, okay, where in the book did it talk about death and dying? What were some of those very important events that I could go back to? So let's go back to chapter 1. So at the very beginning of the book, we know that Maniac Magee's parents die. So let's reread chapter 1 and think about how chapter 1 could tell us about the theme of our book. Maniac Magee was not born in a dump. He was born in a house, a pretty ordinary house, right across the river from here, in Bridgeport. And he had regular parents, a mother and a father, but not for long. One day his parents left him with a sitter and took the P&W high-speed trolley into the city. On the way back home, they were on board when the P&W had its famous crash, when the motorman was drunk and took the high trestle over the Schuylkill River at 60 miles an hour. And the whole caboodle took a swan dive into the water. And just like that, Maniac was an orphan. He was 3 years old. Of course, to be accurate, he wasn't really Maniac then. He was Jeffrey Lionel Magee. Little Jeffrey was shipped off to his nearest relatives, Aunt Dot and Uncle Dan. They lived in Hollidaysburg in the western part of Pennsylvania. Okay, and then in the rest of the chapter, we know that he hated living with them and he eventually ends up running away. The second part of that I thought to turn to was chapter 32, and this is when Grayson dies. So let's reread some of this part and think, okay, what can this part of our book tell us about the theme of death and dying? Most mornings, Grayson would be the first one out of bed. He would turn on the space heater, visit the bandshell lavatory, then heat up some water, get breakfast ready, and finally wake the boy with a gentle shake of the shoulder. On December 30th, it was the silence that woke Maniac and the cold. The space heater wasn't on. No steaming cups sat on the table. The old man was still under the covers. Maniac went over. "Grayson?" He shook the old man. "Grayson?" He took the old man's hand. It was cold. "Grayson?" He didn't run to the superintendent's office. He didn't run to the nearest house. He knew. He held the cold, limp hand that had thrown the pitch that had struck out Willie Mays, that had betrayed the old man's stoic ways by giving him a squeeze. He began talking to the old man. about places he had been on the road, about places the two of them might have gone to, about everything. Then he began to read aloud. He read aloud all the books the old man had learned to read, and he finished with the old man's favorite, Mike Mulligan's steam shovel. When he looked out the window, it was night. He dragged his chest protectors alongside the old man's mat and lay down, and only then, when he closed his eyes, did he cry. In the rest of this chapter, we know that Maniac attends a funeral for Grayson, but before they bury Grayson, Maniac runs away. So let's return to our chart. So we've identified a topic, death and dying. What were some of the recurring events? Well, in the beginning of the book, we know that Maniac's parents die, and that means he ends up living with his aunt and uncle, and he runs away. Later, Grayson, who serves as, a parent to Maniac, dies. And Maniac also has to try to deal with his death. And we know that he sits with Grayson for a little while and spends time with him, almost saying goodbye. We also know that each time Maniac encounters something difficult, he runs away. But also, after a death in Maniac's life, he begins some new adventure and encounters new scenarios. So let's think, what might the author want us as a person? What might she want us to learn about death and dying? Maybe she wants us to learn that death is difficult to deal with, but it can also be the beginning of something new. Okay, your turn. Death is one of the topics in Maniac, Magee. Can you identify another topic that is covered in Maniac, Magee? Write your response on the right. Okay, maybe some of the possible topics you came up with were running away, racism or segregation, prejudice. That means when you judge somebody before you know them, or kindness. So pick one of these topics. Do you have that topic in mind? Okay, next step. After you choose one of the topics from the book, then ask yourself, what parts of the book might I return to in order to reflect on the topic? Is there a specific chapter that you might reread? For your collaboration this week, you're going to choose just one of the topics in our book. After you've chosen a topic, I want you to think about recurring events and specific details about that topic. Then ask yourself, what might the author want me as a person to learn about that topic? Whether it's kindness, or running away, or racism, or prejudice. I'm excited to hear what your themes are and what you come up with.